Dave, I'm very happy that we finally realized all plans, because recently you've been very busy traveling and participating in different gigs after COVID hiatus, which took more than 2 years. You've been very busy. What are the main impressions that you had from recent gigs in Saudi Arabia, for instance? Saudi Arabia is not a place known for an alternative scene.
The Saudis are trying really hard to get things going, but it doesn't feel very genuine at the moment. But that'll change in time. It's like their scene there's been no evolution. They've just jumped in at the top level with massive festivals, and they're bringing in support from around the world, technical support, logistical support, and things like this. So they're trying to jump in at the very top. But for now, they're doing it right, and the people are not. The people are good. So I was quite pleasantly surprised. I'm not sure how sustainable it is as a business, because it seems to be it's very much funded by the government. So I'm not sure whether it's. This is why I say I'm not sure about how genuine it is right now. But I'm sure once the people get used to these things, they'll evolve. It just hasn't.
Then you're going to have
evolve.
Yeah, it will evolve, and you're going to have a genuine alternative scene in Saudi Arabia. I mean,
I think so.
If government is funding the rock scene in Saudi Arabia, after 10 years, it may have better results than the alternative scene in Jordan. Can you compare Saudi alternative scene with Jordanian alternative scene? You've been here for 14 years.
Yeah, I don't think it's not really comparable. In that I haven't actually seen much in the way of any kind of alternative artists in Saudi Arabia. Mm-hmm. Everyone's being brought in from abroad.
Yeah.
Because they're very much at the moment, it's like saying, look, we can do this too. So they're hiring like some A-list people to play there. A lot of the Saudi musicians tends to be very much traditional. Mm-hmm. Traditional Arabic music, which is not a great crowd pleaser. Well, people love it, but it doesn't bring a big crowd. But I was at a festival recently, and they were trying to do something almost on the scale of Glastonbury Festival, the UK festival. There was like 130,000 people there. But 90% at least of the performers, so-called performers, were just DJs.
Yeah, I mean, of course.
And most of the other people who were there were rappers. So there wasn't much in the way of what you could call live music. Yeah. It was kind of, let's pretend to do a festival and you can pretend to be a festival crowd. But like I say, that could change,
What's your experience in general with the Jordanian alternative scene? You've been here for almost 14 years. You witnessed all kinds of ups and downs. You witnessed and experienced the COVID hiatus, which totally shut down the music industry in Jordan.
I mean, one of the problems in Jordan is that the scene is, well, currently, it's almost dead right now. There's not really anybody. These kind of scenes depend. They live from new artists coming through all the time. You can't just have the same people all the time. And unfortunately, that's what it's been for years. With the likes, when I came into it, Autostrad had just started. Jadal had been going for a little while. You had Aka Zafir in the background, El Morabba, you still have those same names, and
Yeah.
there's only a few new people have come along, and promoters aren't wanting to take risks, so many of them have lost money. They're not wanting to take any risks. We don't, again, it comes back to the old problem. There's no indoor venues here. It's all outdoors, which means it's seasonal, which means you can't do anything over the winter. So right now, it's very quiet. And there's a couple of new people coming through, but it's I don't know. There's not a lot of life in the scene at the moment. It needs a kick.
Do you think the problem, or one of the problems, is that people who participate in the local alternative scene are members of the upper classes or upper middle classes? So for them, it's not a profession. Music is not a business for them. It's more a hobby or a pastime to get more chicks, to get more attention, etc.
This is
Do you think that's the problem?
Is that especially what you'd call an alternative scene here? It's very middle class,
or upper class.
If you go, middle class or upper middle class. If you go to East Amman, you won't find an electric guitar. The musicians tend to be old guys, and if there are any younger guys coming through, they're going down the more traditional route, the oud, the nag, things like this. But even then, that seems to be disappearing a little. What we would think of as alternative to the Arab world, which should be playing something maybe Western style or Western style instruments, at least, even if the music is Arabic, is very much a middle class thing. It's very West Amman, and a lot of that is because of the costs involved, and being able to have somewhere to rehearse, having a place you can make a noise, get together with people. So there are some genuine artists there, people who've stuck at it and they don't do anything else. They just do their music, and those people are still around, and there are still people coming through. But that is definitely there's definitely a class thing going on there, and I think part of that is to do with the absence of music in schools. Or the rarity of having music in schools, other than a bit of happy clappy group singing when they're young kids.
Maybe they have music classes in very expensive international schools for upper class people. So this is the problem. The scene is not popular amongst the general Jordanian population.
No, but we're actually seeing the same phenomena now elsewhere in the UK, for example. I mean, it's not as noticeable, but the so-called gentrification of the arts has been on a quite a considerable scale. And the music industry itself, and the film industry, TV, they all seem to gravitate towards this kind of thing. The cost of the kind of education now, where somebody could say study to be in film or theatre, makes it exclusive.
Of course, the ordinary people cannot study that.
No, but they can't study at all. They can't study at all. That's the problem.
Of course. When it started, for instance, we know that economic reforms of late Margaret Thatcher killed the socialist state in the UK in the early 80s.
Yeah, but in the early 80s in Liverpool, there was a big kickback. There was a kickback against it because she made so many people unemployed and took away hope and the concept of progress. It was people forced into the arts, like myself.
Yeah.
So most of the people that I went into, we didn't go into the business. We just started doing music because there was nothing else to do. You know, it was music or it was drugs. You know, so we some of us chose music. Okay, there was a bit of crossover, of course, but it's a lot of the people of my age now playing in the music scene in Liverpool or who've come out of that did it for the same reason, and we're all working class people. And using the money from North Sea Oil, Margaret Thatcher paid for a huge pool of unemployment. And she didn't care what it cost, although she made it sound like she did. You know, she'd accused us all being lazy, not wanting to work for a living, wanting everything for nothing, which wasn't true. We weren't given a choice, so people turned to music and they got together and they created some amazing stuff, and some great music came out of the 80s. And you know, things have changed by the 90s, but an infrastructure had been put in place. There were record companies, there were venues to play, things like this. But recently, wow, things started changing. I noticed massively about 10 to 15 years ago, where it was the Ed Sheerans of this world, people like this started coming through, kids from comfortable backgrounds, with an acoustic guitar, pretending to be folk singers. But they were like, 19 to 23 years old with nothing to say.
Yeah.
And so all the songs are about like, oh, my girlfriend's left me or something like this. Do you know what I mean? Because they've got nothing else to talk about. They haven't lived, they haven't been out there. Unlike, say, working class kids or kids from the north of England of the same age, who would have an awful lot to say if only they knew how to say it or were given the opportunity. But the whole of the art scene has migrated towards the middle class, upper middle class.
What was
the removal of
what was the
grants,
scene?
the removal.
What was the scene what was the music scene in 1970s and early 1980s? You just described 1980s, but Liverpool, as a relatively small town compared to London or Manchester, gave so many brilliant musicians and brilliant bands.
No,
You're talking about go ahead.
Echo and the Bunnymen, Teardrop Explodes, Frankie Goes to Hollywood, all these kind of people. That the list, there's quite a big list actually, they'll probably come back to me later, but there's a huge list of bands. Manchester was similar, not the same, similar. And it seemed as though the most economically depressed areas became the creative hubs. But as so often happens with creative hubs, is the developers see what move in. They see that, oh, someone's taken over that old warehouse and created a rehearsal space.
Yeah.
Or some theatre workshop rooms and that. So somebody comes along and opens up a coffee shop and then a bicycle repair shop, and all of a sudden it's a hipster area.
It is, yes.
And it gets and these old warehouses now become super expensive yuppie flats, and the artists have nowhere to go. But they get forced out, and eventually they're forced out of the city, which is what's happened in America.
You have very expensive hipster areas of LA, like Venice Beach. It's supposed to be a hipster-friendly area, but it's extremely pricey area of LA.
Venice Beach is a real dump,
But very expensive dump. Maybe.
I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is.
It is extremely expensive.
It's expensive.
I know a couple of friends from Jordan who live there, and own properties. They're from Bisharat family. They're big land owners, and they're doing the same business in the US, buying commercial real estates, buying apartment buildings, etc. You need lots of cash to do this. So they reside in Venice Beach because of the environment. They are multi-billionaires, but they act like hipsters and down to earth normal guys. This is their image, although they're not normal people because of their wealth. How do you find? Yeah, please go ahead.
One of the big problems we're having with this at the moment in the UK is that these people move in and they buy up these apartments in inner city areas or ex-industrial areas where there are music venues and art spaces and things like this. And then they put a complaint into the council about noise and they have the venues closed down. And this is a battle that's going on constantly at the moment, is that the things that make these areas culturally rich and make them places people want to live. Once the people move in to live, they then want to close down the culture because it's, you know, they don't like the noise. It's so the city centres are becoming voids of where people live and consume. You know, so the consumerism is taking over from the creativity.
How do you find
the venues?
Yeah, please. Yeah, just finish with
No,
venues.
it's okay. I mean, the venues are having a terrible time. There's one in particular called Night and Day in Manchester, which has been going since the late 80s, early 90s. I've worked there many times, and they're having a terrible time with their neighbours. I mean, their neighbours knew what they were moving into. Night and Day is being a late night music venue, like for 30 years or more, and they're having court cases now trying to shut them down.
Yeah. How you find a post-Brexit UK?
Well, people are. Brexit's the elephant in the room that the authorities will not discuss. Everybody knows that the problems are down to Brexit. People are poorer. Things are much more expensive. Services have been depleted. You know, things that were paid for out the taxes for the people have been depleted, and this is partially 13 years of austerity under Conservative governments, which is a political choice. It's not necessary. And also the Brexit effect, which I say they don't want to discuss. They'll blame anything other than Brexit. You know, it's crazy. Now, a lot of the bands in Liverpool, a lot of the artists in Liverpool used to be constantly touring Europe. Now it's not happening. It's not happening now. The costs involved are just crazy. It's becoming impossible. People are also having the Americans have jumped on the bandwagon as well and pushed up their work visa fees. So bands are now cancelling American tours. But the Brexit thing is it's the biggest, most stupid action by any country since Hitler decided he was going to Moscow.
Do you think that some political circles in the UK created Brexit and gave a political platform and media platform to relatively marginal groups and marginal politicians to promote the idea of Britain outside of the EU? We're talking about the process which started in 2015.
Yeah, well, it's people have felt powerless for quite some years. This is what happens though when you get a Conservative government. When you get a right-wing government, they give you austerity. which is what they basically seem to be doing is getting the working class to pay for everything that they want, and they take the money and run. The money leaves the country, or they invest it in things that they want, and nothing's given back to the people who are actually paying the majority of the taxes. And people were feeling disempowered. So I think some people who voted for Brexit were just doing it to say, because they knew the government at the time under David Cameron, they didn't want Brexit, but they felt that because there was so much political infighting in their own party between pro and against Brexit, they said, okay, let's have a referendum and get these people defeated once and for all. But they'd underestimated the mood of the country, and some people didn't believe Brexit would ever actually happen, voted for it just to give David Cameron a kick in the polls. And we ended up with this disaster on our hands. But these people, they like to create these situations, and you do get these fringe groups appearing. The current situation, we had an example just yesterday or the day before, where a bunch of Nazis, right-wing protesters, showed up at a hotel just outside Liverpool.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yes.
And like this hotel was housing refugees.
True.
And now Liverpool has always stood against fascists. When the fascists have shown up in Liverpool before, they've been run out of town, unceremoniously kicked out of the city. But this time they managed to start something of a riot. And my question about this is, the police were saying, oh, we have to facilitate peaceful protest. I'm like, why are you facilitating a protest outside a hotel housing refugees? Why don't you, if this was a genuinely peaceful protest, why didn't it go to the local council chambers or to the House of Parliament in London? The policymakers, the lawmakers. Why don't you protest to those people? No, this was a show of intimidation by some fringe right-wing fanatics. But because they announced, we knew it was going to happen, so the people opposing them showed up as well. And the idea was to create a riot situation, to get some bad publicity, to get this into the public eye. And this is what the fascists do.
How popular are far-right groups in the UK? How popular they are in the UK? How popular are Nazi groups in the UK in general?
They're not popular. Well, they're not. The right-wing groups are not popular, but and people are generally not right-wing, generally not that racist or xenophobic. But in times of hardship, where you walk down the street and you see all these homeless people, some of them ex-soldiers and things like this, and then you say, but the refugees have got a 5-star hotel.
Yeah, of course, you need a scapegoat.
Where we've had 10 years of this government stirring up hatred against foreigners, brown people, anyone who arrives as a refugee. Let's just say the less educated can be steered in that direction, which is being a right-wing tactic everywhere. This is how you do it: is you mobilize the ignorant. And this is what they're trying to do. And it's quite scary.
Do you think ignorant people, misinformed people, voted for Brexit and voted for the UK to leave the EU?
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, most people I know were always skeptical of the government, and were always outward-looking pro-Europeans anyway, who like to travel and don't believe in the concept of Britishness and all this kind of thing. But for people who've always trusted the government and believed it and can't believe that the government will lie to them, when people like Johnson and Farage came along and just lied to them and kept on lying to them, they went for it. So I mean, I'm trying to let some of them off the hook here,
Yeah.
you know, whereas I could use some real strong language about what I really think about them. But yeah, I mean, it's the same. It was a power grab by Johnson. He would say anything to do anything to get into power. He doesn't care. It's like truth has got nothing to do with anything with him. I mean, even Farage, who's a complete right-wing idiot, I don't think he's purposely a liar. I think he's delusional, but I think even he was manipulated by Johnson. And those people, they call them Brexiteers. Those people are still running the government.
Like musketeers.
Well, they like to think of themselves as these.
Yeah, probably think they're musketeers.
They think they're these quirky, funny characters. You know what I mean? Like got the likes of Rees-Mogg and who's like some kind of. They call him the haunted pencil. He's this Victorian freak. Him. Honestly, people are ignorant, incredibly ignorant, to have fallen for all this. It's a clown show. It really is. It's an absolute clown show. But the problem now is that the country is in an absolute mess. I mean, it's really desperate, and the government are lashing out anybody to blame. I'm actually starting to believe now that the government is. They keep talking about the migrant boats and how we've got to stop them. I don't believe they want to stop them. I think they need the migrants coming in to sort of garner support for their right-wing policies. To facilitate the divisions in society that they thrive upon.
They need a polarized society in this situation. So
yeah, exactly.
Everybody's going to blame other groups, and other groups are going to blame a domicile, population, etc. So this is a well-known strategy of divide and conquer. How do you see the role of the royal family? The royal family should be a factor of stability in the UK.
Well, they've always been. I mean, they're more irrelevant now than they ever were. I mean, Prince Harry has tried to make the whole thing a soap opera.
Oh yeah.
But effectively, it is a bit of a soap opera, I don't consider them even a subject for discussion anymore. To be honest with you, they're so irrelevant.
So you think the royal family is not? Yeah, you think the royal family? You think the royal family, including the King Charles III, are politically irrelevant in the UK?
Oh, they've always been politically irrelevant. They've been. They've been a means of. I don't know. They've just been a tool of the government to be wheeled out if necessary, for some ceremony and some bit of fake patriotism here and there. But even that now is that under the current circumstances where people can't afford to pay their electricity bills and stuff, it's just people are seeing all the wealth being hoovered and going up to the upper classes. There's been no displays of wealth by the royal family for quite some time, but we have the coronation to look forward to, don't we? I mean, I don't know. I think they're a distraction, so I don't pay them any attention.
Because some people outside of the UK believe that the Windsor dynasty is so important, so omnipotent, that they command the US, they command not only the British government, but they manipulate geopolitical decisions around the world.
I think I mean, there's one argument that says they're part of a group, of people around the world that do that kind of thing, but you know, they're poster boys. You know, they're just for me. It's just a show. It's just it's a piece of theatre. But that kind of theatrical nonsense is okay when a country's at war, you know, and you need these kind of figureheads, and however evil this kind of patriotism is, it's sometimes necessary, you know, when a country is being attacked. But the problem with Britain is that we're being attacked from within, and it is the upper classes who are doing it. And they are completely eviscerating the country. The whole idea is that the workers never have enough money to do anything other than work.
Yeah, you can
they're now, you know, they're after you. They've raised the pension age to 67 years old, and one idea is that you spend another few years paying into a pension scheme, and you have less years alive to see the benefit of it. But also, it's a big, massive, big pot of money that the government can dip into, and they do whenever they feel like it. They steal the money sometimes. It's been done before. They're making things so expensive. I mean, they're even doing things like, we have a thing called the Pensioners Bus Pass, where people over the age of 65, well, now 67, can have free travel on public transport. They want to take it away. And it's like, why would you spend the time changing the law for something so stupid as that? You know, it's like, of all the problems that the country faces, but it shows it's symptomatic of everything that's going on in the country. I mean, Macron's trying it with the French, and they're not having it. You know, they're out on the streets protesting about it, and he's just trying to raise their pension age from 62 to 64. In the UK, it's now, like I say, it's 67. And they're taking away all the benefits that pensioners get in Britain. People are going to be left with nothing, and that's just the way they like it. It's quite frightening. It's quite frightening. And anybody who, you know, we don't have an effective opposition. We have the Labour Party, who are supposed to be the opposition, but they are just a tool of the establishment to make us believe that we have some kind of democratic process. The last person who gave any kind of hope, love him or hate him, was Jeremy Corbyn. And people thought, yes, there is another way of doing things. And they demolished him.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to send you another link because our time is up, and we'll continue with Corbyn.
Okay, can you give me a few minutes? Yeah.
Yeah, I'll send you the new link.
All right. Okay.
We were talking about Jeremy Corbyn. In 2019, he wrote a Labour manifesto that many labeled as one of the most radical political platform in decades. But at the same time, he was accused of anti-Semitism, which is ridiculous, of course.
Absolutely.
That was the ridiculous slander that he's an anti-Semite. What are his positions now, and what is his weight once he's out of the Labour Party? Because they assassinated him in a way. Politically, he was assassinated.
They did, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, he's still around. But he's very much on the outside of everything now. But the thing he's pushing now is about renationalisation, which people thought was crazy. Renationalisation of taking the railways, water, electricity, gas, public utilities back into public ownership. These are his policies. They were his policies at the time. and he'd costed it out. And the problem was that he became so dangerous to the establishment that wanted everything in the hands of private capital that he had to be got rid of. In other countries, he would have been actually physically assassinated in some places.
No, he wasn't physically assassinated, but they did a character assassination of him by
absolutely.
launching the campaign in 2020
yeah.
that he's some kind of vile Nazi and anti-Semite.
Yeah. But, I mean, what we're seeing is is all of the companies that used to belong to the British people, where any profits that were made were reinvested or distributed amongst the people. And we were all shareholders in these things. These are now in the hands of friends of the Tories, Tory party donors, people who give money to the Conservative Party have benefited from this. And we see like the big energy companies. We used to have North Sea oil, but it was squandered to pay for the unemployment. That was a policy decision. But the railways, for example, in France and Germany, railways are cheap and efficient, and that's because but this is because, you see, the British railways are nationalised, but they're nationalised by foreign governments. This is the crazy thing. The Germans, the Italians, the French own massive shares in the British railways,
and they're actually the owners of the British railways these days.
Yeah.
And this is why privately we have spoken privately about very expensive tickets for train tickets. Actually, it's more expensive to travel from Liverpool to London by train than fly from Amman to London.
Exactly.
This is crazy.
Exactly. No, it's absolutely ridiculous.
Insane.
And the thing is that the train services are not even good. The idea was to introduce competition will improve everything. This was the big lie under Margaret Thatcher, but it was actually a way of just taking everything from the people and giving it to their buddies. And these people who make millions, billions out of this, the money doesn't stay in the country; it just leaves the country. But one of the last vestiges of good public ownership was the National Health Service, and they're selling it off piecemeal. And they're defunding it, making sure it doesn't work. This is what they do, is they defund, make sure it doesn't work, and then say, oh, we need to privatize, we need to bring in private people who know what they're doing. But, utilities like water and electricity and gas and public transport are far too important to be in the hands of shareholders.
Of course.
Private shareholders. These are things that have to keep functioning as opposed to having to keep making a profit. There's no necessity for these things to make a profit. They're there as a public service.
True.
But everything is about profitability for shareholders. Now, that could lead to believe that the Conservatives think, oh, well, they're more business minded, but they're not, because they can't run a business. Any of them, they're useless. They don't have any business acumen. They work in trading shares is not running a business. But they can't run a manufacturing business or anything like this. They just don't know what they're doing. They're a bunch of privately educated toffs who have no clue, and they have utter contempt for the working people of the country who actually generate the wealth, and they believe that they're superior to them. And this is why Jeremy Corbyn was a threat, because maybe Corbyn was naive to believe he could have done it. The idea of not just redistributing wealth, but redistributing power and influence across the country to put it back into the hands of the people. They were never going to let him do that. Never going to let him do that. And the Israeli government were quite happy to jump on board and help, along with people like Rupert Murdoch, the big media barons.
Of course.
Total, absolute demolition. But now we have a totally ineffective political opposition under Keir Starmer, who is actually expelling Jews from the Labour Party who don't agree with him, or any Jews that object to the situation with the Palestinians are expelled from the Labour Party. So
it
the guy
became
who
a Labour Zionist party.
absolutely,
It became
absolutely.
like Israeli Labour Party, or we could.
That's and honestly, I don't know where it's going. I'm quite, so I'm quite happy to just keep traveling around the world. At the moment, I'm sitting here in Jordan, but it could be anywhere. Is because the UK doesn't. I don't have any hope for the UK at the moment.
Yeah. How many people are in your situation in the UK?
Not many. Not in my situation in terms
your
of living
situation,
outside of the UK.
Yes, I'm not talking only about people who live and work abroad like yourself, but people who are stuck in the UK and they have to put up with imbeciles who run economy and politics.
There's a lot of it, but I think most of those people have been forced to focus on their own situation rather than seeing the global implications of it. Rather than saying that it's a problem for the whole of the human race currently, and it is a global issue. So they're just focusing on their own situation, into like, I don't know. There's no the community spirit idea has gone out the window, So because nobody's thinking, everyone was only thinking of themselves. And this is, again, like you said, the whole divide and rule thing. Before COVID, we had the biggest thing in the news was the climate change conferences, and we got hammered with it day in, day out on the news. But now, with the energy crisis in the UK, where people's bills, energy bills have gone up 250%, I think, something in some places. People are now using wood burners, and we've now got a problem with pollution from wood burners. But it's only the affluent, it's only the rich areas that can afford to have wood burning stoves in their houses. So now, they're cutting down more trees and they're burning more logs. So people are thinking, well, fuck it, I mean, whatever. This is just, I'm just going to look after myself.
Of course. But this is the repercussion of atomization of the society. When you atomize society, it's very easy to break the spine of individuals and small groups. Yeah. This is no brainer. If you destroy the syndicates, if you destroy political movements and social movements, and everything ends up as a private initiative or private anguish and political statement which doesn't have a far-reaching effect, then ruling elites can do whatever they want, not only in the UK but in other places as well.
Absolutely. I mean, another weapon that they're using against working people is inflation. Now, people could say, "Oh, that's not deliberate. That's just a side effect of something else." But they're saying, "Oh, yeah, well, I mean, inflation in the UK is as high as I can ever remember. I think it's running at about 12% at the moment." But what they're ignoring is the fact that food inflation is running at 17%. Now that doesn't affect, somebody who only spends maybe 2% of their salary filling the fridge with food. It doesn't make any difference to them. But somebody who spends 60% of their disposable income on food, that's massive.
Of course.
It's absolutely, and let's face it, food budget is not actually a disposable income. It's, and we have now the new, the guy they brought in as the new deputy chairman of the Conservative Party, the guy who said, "Oh, you can live for 30 pence a day. The problem is poor people don't know how to cook."
It's very cynical.
Well, it's this one horrible character, but some people are saying this could be the death of the Tory party. But these people died years ago. I think they're zombies. You know, it's but how is it coming back to how is that reflecting on the music scene, for example? We were talking Brexit on the music business.
Yeah.
Ow. I was reading the other day that last time I was touring Europe on a major basis was 2014. I haven't done a major European tour since then, but it was easy. You know, you jump on the bus with all your equipment and off you go. 28, 30, 40, even 40 gigs over 8 weeks. Now, if you're British, you're only allowed to stay 90 days out of every 180 days. So you can only be in Europe for 90 days in every 180, which means for someone like myself who would say, I don't know, in the busy season, you would do 2 tours.
Yeah.
Over a spit. Pardon me. You can't do that
Don't
now.
worry.
You can't do that. They won't allow you back in. You've used up all your days. You have to go. The situation with taking equipment over is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, there's a thing called cabotage, which refers to large truck companies.
Yeah.
And if you have a truck full of, say, sound and lighting equipment, and you take it over to France, you've got, say, a show in Paris. From the first stop that truck makes, they have 7 days to get back to the UK. They can make 2 stops in between.
Yeah.
But from the first stop, they have only 7 days, and then they've got to go back to the UK, which means that you can't. Means the equipment suppliers of the UK are finished. In Europe, the trucking companies are trying to relocate to Europe, taking their jobs and their trucks into France, Belgium, and Germany, trying to set up there, because it's absolutely impossible to run a tour from the UK anymore. Unless, you know, the British creative industries were worth £111 billion every year. 111 billion. That's like that's about $130 billion a year industry, and it's being thrown on the scrap heap. And all of these industries have been contacting the government for advice on how to negotiate through this, and they're getting no help because the government have not got a clue what they're doing. They don't know. Nobody knows. Things like work permits, I would be able to go without a work permit, do my job, no problem. The situation now is that if you're a European Union member, the rules are simple because they're the same rules for everybody.
Of course.
Everybody obeys the same rules. If you're not a European Union member, every country has its own rules. So if I was doing, say, 15 different countries on a tour, the tour manager has to apply for work permits and look at the regulations for every one of those 15 countries, for every member of the crew. So it depends where you're from, where you're going to, how long you're going to stay. The paperwork is just off the scale.
You need a legal team. You need the law office for that.
You do, but the problem is that nobody knows how to get this information because the government's not providing any support, because the government doesn't know. So you have to contact every individual country.
Yeah.
Give them dates and things like this. Now, in the middle of say you're on tour for 2 months, after 3 weeks, you may get a couple of gigs might get rescheduled. Well, you can't do that. You can't do that because it's all written into work permits and things like this. If you but a box of T-shirts, the paperwork involved in taking a box of T-shirts to sell into Europe is just off the scale. There's all the VAT regulations for each country, the taxes, things like this. If you want to take even your guitars, for example, you have to have a thing called a carnet, which is a list of every single item you are carrying with you. And every border you cross, you have to have that carnet, you have to have that list of equipment checked and stamped. Now, even leaving the UK, there's no carnet office at the ports. You have to go to an office somewhere on a motorway services, maybe 100 miles outside the port. And there's no signposts, there's no information as to how to get there. Some of the forums on social media for tour managers and touring personnel are just questions like, how can I get my carnet stamped? Where is the office? I'm at the service station, I can't find the office. And they're going, oh, you go behind the petrol stations, you see the toilets, we'll turn right there, and then there's this building there, you know. And it's just beyond belief, and people are appealing to the government for help, and they're not getting it, the government, because they don't know. They've just thrown everyone to the dogs, and they don't care. They don't care because their ideology of the destruction and total removal of freedom of movement. They talk about freedom of movement like it's a bad thing. I don't get it. This ideology has been more important to them than the well-being of the people, business, prosperity. All that can go out the window. Ideology is everything. They're fanatics. This is the problem. They are fanatics.
How they handled the COVID pandemic in 2020 and 2021 compared to Jordan? You've been in Jordan. You've been stuck with us for a while. You couldn't move from Jordan, but what they did in the UK during the COVID pandemic?
Well, I mean, while we were during that period in COVID, when the army were on the streets and you weren't allowed to leave the house at all, there's still 3 flights a day coming in from Wuhan into Heathrow. You know, and people are not being checked, and they're being released into the public transport system and into the population. So it was a government manufactured disaster. And then now they're trying to take credit for the saying, but we had the best rollout, best vaccine program. Well, the vaccine program was good. It was effective in the UK. But then in a country with a national health service and a good infrastructure, and like compared to other countries, a relatively small population, but everything's well administered, of course, that rolling out a vaccine program is not. You don't have to be Superman to do that, but this is what they when people say about the way they handled the COVID crisis, they just divert attention. But we had the best vaccine rollout, and look how fast we did it. And it was like, the people who did it were the people who you're now refusing to give pay rises to. You know, the nurses, the doctors, the National Health Service. As usual, the Conservatives saw the COVID crisis as a way to make money for them and their friends. They paid £37 billion, no questions asked, for a track and trace service that never worked. 37 billion. Nobody's answering. Where did that money go? Where did that money go? The Conservative MPs were setting up companies to supply PPE, protective equipment, for the National Health Service, and supply masks and gloves and gowns and things like this. And so basically they're saying, let's buy a load of this stuff in from Africa or from China or from some firm in the Far East, and we'll charge the government this much money for it. And companies that were manufacturing this stuff in the UK, who didn't donate to the Conservative Party's personal funds, were not given a look in for the contracts. And the contracts were awarded to, there were hairdressers someone who does the hair of a Conservative, millions and millions of pounds for equipment. And this equipment has to show up, but it doesn't. We have this one woman, for example, this Michelle Moan, who bought a yacht out of it. She squirreled away 29 million into an offshore account. She also bought this big yacht, and as soon as she starts getting investigated, she's disappeared. She's off in the Mediterranean somewhere on her yacht, with all this money that they stole. And the problem is that the same people are still in power now. you know, and they're still just lying about it. So it was terribly badly handled. It was just to try and make a profit out of everything.
Of course.
Not in an honest way. They have to try to make a dishonest profit out of everything that they do, and that COVID was no exception.
What's the difference then between the Labour Party and Tories? Conservatives and the Labour Party?
Very little. Most people now believe that if we get a Labour government, it won't change anything. I mean, I would say Conservative, that the current situation is the Labour MPs are probably a bit more intelligent, but they're no less scheming, and they don't have the best wishes for the people. They don't have the people's best, needs at heart. So I don't believe we have a democracy in the UK, actually, in actual fact. I think we have people who are put in place by massive corporate money to keep things the same as they are, keep things going the same way they are. So this is one of the things that's quite desperate. You see, Jeremy Corbyn gave people hope for change. But Keir Starmer, now, he represents stagnation. There's just more of the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is why it's a very depressing picture.
And how big is the gap between the north of England and Scotland on one side and south? We were discussing that many times. That northern. The gap between northern England and Scotland and the south. We discussed that many times. Well, in our private conversations.
Yeah, the north-south divide. They call it the north-south divide.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Scotland is a different case, but people in the north of England feel themselves to be more allied to the people of Scotland than they do to the people of London. So, that one of the big Conservative policies in their manifesto was about what they call levelling up.
Yeah.
Where all this money was provided to try to put the north on a financial and cultural level with the south. But that money again has been diverted into the pockets of Conservative Party donors, where if you go to the north of England, you'll find all the public libraries are being closed. The public sports centres are being closed. Public transport is being defunded. All this kind of thing. So the north-south divide is as bad as ever, if not worse. It's two different countries in such a small country. You only have to travel 100 miles outside London, and the landscape has changed. The financial landscape has completely changed, and the further north you go, kind of worse it gets. Once you hit the kind of Liverpool, Manchester area, once you get north of Cheshire, it's bad. All the way up then through to Scotland, people are much, much poorer. Wages are bad. The kind of jobs you get when they, provide like, oh, we're going to provide investment for Liverpool. We're bringing the Eurovision Song Contest to Liverpool, all this kind of thing. Well, I mean, for sure that, what it means is that Liverpool people are going to end up serving the drinks, cleaning the toilets, sweeping the streets, while proper jobs, the jobs where the money goes is going to go to outside contractors from outside of the city, and this is the same old story. It's the same old story time after time. So what's his name? The Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak. Sorry, we've had so many.
Yeah, the Sunak, the Indian Prime Minister.
It's like Italy at the moment. We have, so many prime ministers. But Sunak was caught, he was caught on camera talking to some of his at a garden party in Surrey, I think it was. He was saying, "Oh, there was." 20 million pounds, which was earmarked to go for some deprived areas in the north of England, Well, I stopped that and I brought it here to this town, to this village, you know, and you got all these rich people standing around going, oh, yes, 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 yes. And he's bragging. He's bragging about how he took funds that were allocated to help poor people in the north and how he managed to stop it going there and kept it for the people in the south. And he thinks that's a good thing. And this is what we're dealing with. And I mean, even if I was an old school Tory supporter, I couldn't possibly go along with these people. I'm not, as it happens, but I couldn't possibly go along with these people that are in power now. It's desperate. It's a desperate situation, you know, and I really feel for people. I feel myself lucky to, you know, I'm almost like a homeless gypsy in a way. You know, I just hop around one place to another. I haven't settled anywhere. I don't own anything. I just go and do concerts in different countries, and I make albums with people, make music with people. And people say, oh yeah, but that's like such a precarious existence. Well, it is, but then the people who are saying that think that they're safe. They're
No,
not,
they're not.
you know.
Of course.
This is the thing. They think that they are, you know. People in the younger generations than mine who've been paying into a pension all their working life are going to end up with nothing.
Of course. What do you think about Scotland? Are they going to secede from the UK? Are they going to have a successful referendum, or
I honestly don't know. I honestly don't know. And the thing is that again, we can't really talk about Scotland as a one single homogenous mass, because I think if they do separate from the UK, I think the infighting between political factions, as has always been the history of Scotland,
of course,
with the interference of foreign powers and different allegiances and things will come into play. But I mean, there's no doubt about it. They'd probably be better off without the current administration in London telling them what to do. They'd probably be better off than that. But you know, I think you'd suddenly find a lot of members of the Conservative Party suddenly migrating up to Scotland to try to rule. You know, as they did in the 1700s. You know,
for the end, what are you planning to do in 2023? Are you planning new tours in the region, new gigs? Now in the winter time,
I can't plan. Sorry, mate. Sorry.
I said now in the winter time, nothing's going on in Oman.
No.
Are you planning to tour the region, to go to Egypt or?
Hope so. I would hope so. I mean, I can't really make those plans. I'm at the mercy of my clients, depending on what they want to do. And I just have to wait and see. Hopefully picking up new clients. There's a possibility of picking up some new clients from the UK and other parts of the region. So, you know, that could open things up a little bit, especially with the Saudi market. I mean, things are happening in Egypt. There's lots of gigs happening in Egypt all the year round. The problem is that they're not paying enough. So it doesn't make financial sense for people to take me, pay a flight and a hotel and a fee for me to go with them. You know? So I really don't know. I just have to sit this winter out, trying to do some work in the studio, make some new records with people. I mean, there's the correlation between making new music, recording it and getting it out, and actually getting yourself gigs later in the year and getting paid better. So I wish people would invest a little bit in their own music, write and record, and put it out there. I'm hoping to do some stuff with 47 Soul and El Farai. We might be doing some work across North Africa and some in Europe later in the year. That and all the other usual stuff on the horizon, really. You just don't know. The one phone, I've always said, you know, you can be sitting around depressed thinking nothing's going to happen, and then the phone rings and everything changes with one phone call.
True.
and you never know where your next job is going to come from. So, and the next job can change things.
We should definitely catch up. We
Yeah,
can. I'll try to arrange something for next week, and we can sit and talk.
All right.
We haven't seen each other for a while. I
Yeah.
wish you the best 2023, and we're going to continue talking about these topics. It's just the first of our conversations. Thank you so much for your time. If you want to say something,
All right, mate.
Yeah.
Pleasure. Take care. Speak soon.
See you soon.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.